What is up, ladies and gents? This is George Bean, and in this review I go into deep rural areas of France to review a little horror film from there. That is the 2003 French horror film High Tension, aka Haute Tension in its original French language, or aka Switchblade Romance in the United Kingdom. But anyways, this film was directed by Alexandre Aja, written by Aja and his partner Gregory Levasseur, and starring Cecil de France, Maïwan, and Philippe Nahon. In terms of its receptions, upon its release in 2003, in the US, the film had received a somewhat mixed to negative reception from the professional critics. One prime example being how Roger Ebert gave it only 1 star, calling it poor, nasty, brutish, and short, and adding that the film had a plot hole that is not only large enough to drive a truck through, but in fact does have a truck driven right through it. But despite this, other American critics such as James Berardinelli, Variety's Lisa Nesselson, and The Village Voice's Mark Holcomb were more forgiving towards the film, with some of them praising it for its suspense and homaging to the 1970s American slasher films. The plot: two college girls, Marie and Alex, travel to France's rural countryside to spend time at Alex's family's country home. However, on their first night there, a brutish serial killer arrives at the house, breaks into it, massacres Alex's family in cold blood, and kidnaps her to make her his latest victim. But unbeknownst to the victim, Marie had evaded his path of destruction, and so as the night progresses, Marie tries to do everything she can to avoid being discovered by the killer, rescue her friend Alex, and hopefully defeat the killer in this deadly cat and mouse game between the lowly girl and the ogre-like serial killer. There really isn't a lot of production trivia on this film, really, but you can tell that this film was crafted as an homage to the gritty slasher films from the 1970s and 1980s, such as Maniac, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Friday the 13th. Alexandre Aja and Gregory Levasseur had said that they had used to watch those horror films when they were children, so it's understandable that they'd want to make a horror film of their own. According to the IMDb page, the original concept for the film was for it to take place entirely at Alex's house over the course of the night, but Aja and Levasseur had decided that the story needed more locations, but wanted to keep the idea of it taking place all in one evening. This would lead the storyline to then move on to the gas station and eventually the garden house. And as for another fun trivia fact, is that all of the makeup and gore effects were created by renowned horror makeup artist Gianetto De Rossi, who was a favorite of late director Lucio Fulci. One of their more notable collaborations being on the 1979 Italian zombie film Zombie 2, which was made to be an unofficial Italian sequel to George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. And in addition, De Rossi had also worked on the on-set practical effects on 2 films in 1984, those being the sci-fi film Dune and the fantasy action film Conan the Destroyer. And I will say, the makeup effects by De Rossi was done very well in this film. They really do look very realistic and pretty brutal, especially when someone gets their throat slashed badly with a razor blade by the killer, and the cutting looks very horrifying to look at. And this is something to mention as well, but High Tension had been associated with the new French extremity movement that was going on during the 2000s, as France was then making films that were going more for extreme violence, releasing films such as this, Calvaire in 2004, Shaitan in 2006, Frontiers and Inside in 2007, and Pascal Laugier's Martyrs in 2008. And also, one huge interesting trivia about this film is that several viewers of the film had noticed some striking similarities between this film's plot and the plot of Dean Koontz's novel Intensity. When questioned about the matter in 2004, Alexandre Aja had acknowledged that he had read the novel and was aware of the similarities. And on his website, Koontz had stated that he was also aware of the plagiarism, but would not sue because he found the film so puerile, so disgusting, and so intellectually bankrupt that he didn't want the association with it that would inevitably come if he pursued an action against the filmmaker. And here's something I had just recently found out when writing this review, which I'm sure you'll find kind of funny. The gas station clerk, Jimmy, the actor playing Jimmy is actually Frank Calfone, who was the director of such films as P2, which was produced by Aja, the 2012 remake of Maniac starring Elijah Wood, and Amityville Awakening starring Bella Thorne. Now, I do feel the need to mention that this is not Alexandre Aja's first film as a director, but actually his second. He, along, had previously made a film before in 1999 called Furia, which had actually featured French actress Marion Cotillard in it. But with that said, I will say that with this being Aja's second directorial effort, and it also being his first horror film, I will say that I believe he did a damn good job with it here. This film was like his shot at making a dirty and gritty slasher film, like ones from the 70s. Now, despite its somewhat negative receptions in the US, its overall success had actually helped Aja in landing the job on directing and co-writing the 2006 remake of Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. Thanks to Craven having seen High Tension and hiring Aja for his remake. This was news from a very long time ago, but I had heard that out of the very few films projects Aja was reportedly slated to direct, one of them I had heard was the sci-fi horror film Smart House, not related to the 1999 Disney Channel movie of the same name. But for this film, based on the synopsis, I've heard that there was to be like a home invasion film, in which a group of criminals attempt to break into the house of a family placed under the FBI Witness Protection Program. But little do criminals know is that the house is actually an autonomous smart house, which goes into legal defense mode to protect the family. Accordingly, based on the last news I heard, it has Alexandre Aja as director, saw director James Wan slated as a producer on the film, and Studio Lionsgate distributing. To say personally, has anybody heard about this upcoming film besides me? Because to be honest, I am a huge fan of films that feature a home invasion in it, and so this Smart House film intrigues me genuinely, so I would love to see this actually get made. That is, if it actually does ever get made, but we'll see. Now, as for me and my personal opinion on this film, I hadn't gotten around to getting this movie on DVD and formally watched it until just 2 years ago. But having spent 2 years watching it multiple times, I could honestly say that High Tension is a pretty enjoyable little slasher film from friendly little France. The tension and atmosphere, as well as the cat and mouse game between Marie and the killer, was done pretty well, especially during the home invasion and gas station scenes. Those scenes actually had me edging towards the side of my seat most of the time. Once the killer arrives and enters the house, the movie, and especially the cat and mouse, properly begins. He immediately begins slaughtering Alex's parents in very brutal ways, and once the suspense begins, it never lets up. Marie is upstairs listening to what is going on downstairs, and she tries to do what she can to avoid being detected and found by the killer. It has this sort of die-hard approach to it in the scene, as like in that film, Marie is suddenly thrust into a dangerous situation and has to avoid detection by the villain. And much like John McClane, Marie spends most of the film barefoot. It shows how unprepared these two heroes are for what they end up in. I do absolutely love the gas station scene. Marie gets out of the truck to find help from the clerk Jimmy, but she has to avoid being found by the killer still. So she spends the scene trying to hide from him, running into the gas station while he's filling up his truck with gas, hides behind the store shelves, and the killer comes in and speaks with Jimmy. The tension is building up as Jimmy tries to act cool, but as he gets booze for the killer then kills him with an axe. It's so surprising and shocking the way Jimmy is killed. And this was obviously intended to homage a similar axe death in The Shining. And after killing Jimmy, the killer is aware that somebody else is there. And so he turns off the lights in the store and tries to corner whoever's there, and Marie runs further into the place and eventually hides in a restroom stall as the killer walks slowly into the restrooms. It's really fucking intense, the tension building up and up, building up as the killer is searching for her until he stops and leaves, right before he was 2 or 3 stalls away from finding her, so she got lucky there. And after the gas station scene, the film then suddenly goes into featuring a car chase scene between Marie and a cool Hot Wheels car and the killer in his truck. It's funny that this slasher film then resorts to having a car chase, but it is actually done very well. A bit action-oriented, and it helps keep the suspense maintained as the film continues on, very fast-paced. And it ends with Marie being pushed off the road by the killer, and she crashes into the woods, which ends up leading them to an abandoned garden house where they have their final confrontation there. During the garden house scene, Marie has a cool weapon in the form of a garden wood post with barbed wire wrapped around it. It is a cool weapon for a horror film, and the overall scene still retains the cat and mouse tension between the two. Yes, this film features death scenes that are very brutal and bloody, but again, isn't that the whole point behind the slasher film? That it's supposed to be brutal and bloody? I mean, it is supposed to show just how brutal this killer really is when he kills someone. I mean, he brutally slits someone's throat with a shaving razor, cutting very deep into the flesh, swinging an axe into a man's chest, and crunches it further into him. And he himself is beaten in the face with a fence post with barbed wire. And to be honest, watching this movie, the gore isn't really at all that bad. Yeah, sure, there's a lot of it in it, but it isn't exactly as brutal or violent as what is seen in a movie like Hostel. I mean, Hostel is so brutal with its violence, that I could barely get through that movie, not even its sequel, because it feels so painful for me to watch with such scenes in those films. Especially where in the sequel, a man gets castrated, so I can't watch, but still, high tension violence is barely anything compared to Hostels. And as for the cast, Cecile de France was pretty good as Marie, the main heroine of the film. She does very well in portraying fear throughout the film and how she grows and stuff. She does manage to show how scared she is through her emotions without having to speak it out. And as a side note, she was also in the 2004 film Around the World in 80 Days, of which was her first English language debut. So thought that'd be a nice tidbit for y'all. And my one was okay as Alex. There's not much really to say about this character, as she's just the damsel in distress for the film. She spends a majority of the film held hostage by the killer. But it is fun to see her get sprayed with a ton of fake blood all over her as she's screaming bloody murder. But Philippe Nahon was fantastic as the killer. He manages to appear huge and intimidating. The way he moves, how he commits his murder spree through the family house in the beginning, and also calculating, and how he corners to get Jimmy right before killing him with the axe. Even though he was like in his early 70s when he did this role, he still looks pretty big and huge. The way the camera frames him in the shots, he seems very menacing and frightening in how he portrayed the role. Nobody would possibly ever stand a chance against him unless they came prepared with a weapon. And of course, to bring this up, on the DVD, you have 2 audio tracks for the film. One in its original French language, accompanied with English subtitles for the dialogue, and the other of an English dubbing of the entire film. You can select whichever of the tracks on the DVD when watching the film. As I can say, I sometimes always prefer to watch a foreign film in its original foreign language most of the time, something I had also done on other films such as Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, the 1954 Godzilla film, the 2003 detective film Memories of Murder, and the 2006 monster film The Host, both directed by the same guy and were from South Korea, and a couple other foreign films. Now, what I need to mention is that this film has a major twist revealed at the very end, and I will need to go into spoiler territory to talk about it, so if you had not seen the movie, I'd recommend that you turn off this video, go get this movie on DVD, and check the movie out before finishing this video. And trust me, you will hopefully enjoy this movie. You are looking for a good old-fashioned slasher film with loads of tension, suspense, and atmosphere. Okay? So here I go with spoilers. So at the end of the film, after their final confrontation in the garden house, Marie finally defeats and kills the killer in the garden house. We then cut to the police arriving at the gas station and finds Jimmy's body laying there. And when they reviewed the security camera videos, they discovered that it is actually Marie who had killed Jimmy, thus leading to the big major twist, that everything Marie was experiencing, and most of all the killer himself, was a figment of her imagination, and that she was orchestrating everything in the film. The motive was that Marie had deeply loved Alex, and so she had imagined that some maniacal killer had done the killings, and that Marie was making herself out to be the hero, rescuing Alex from the sadistic killer and win over Alex's affections. This fact is strengthened when it cuts back to Marie freeing Alex in the truck, and upon being freed from her bonds, she immediately freaks out at Marie and calls her a murderer, but Marie is completely convinced that everything she's been through was all real and that she had really defeated the killer. And when she tries to calm Alex, Alex then attacks her and flees through the woods. And it's then that Marie then turns the killer, like literally, and then chases Alex with a mobile concrete saw, chasing her to a small road where she brutally kills a passing driver who had tried to help Alex. It is fucking brutal the way the driver is killed by that concrete saw, disemboweling his chest. Damn. And cornering an injured Alex on the road, Marie kisses her before she is then stabbed in the chest by Alex with a crowbar before it cuts to Marie locked and chained in a cell as Alex watches her through a two-way mirror. This twist has been the main point of criticism in reviews, with many claiming that the twist kinda ruins the logic of the entire movie and contradicts everything that has happened in the entire movie, and raises questions in how Marie had been able to do all these things, like in the car chase, with all of that in her head too. But my 2 cents, I actually didn't mind the twist at all. I know, shocking, but I thought it was a nice little twist similar to Psycho, but more extreme. But I think that is because I watched the movie the first time while stoned. That then we also get to have a scene paying homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, only this time involving a fucking concrete saw. I mean, just look at that thing. That looks fucking cool right there. And it even has the Still brand on it. But another thing is that I had read and listened to Aja explaining how the twist ending would have drawn out in the script. According to him, the script had the entire movie from Marie's version of events. You didn't find out she was the killer until the very end of the film. After Marie defeats the killer and rescues Alex in the truck. Which was when it was supposed to cut back to the hospital room and you see Marie in handcuffs. A police officer would roll in the TV and show Marie the camera video of her killing Jimmy at the gas station, and he would then ask her if she had wanted to change her story. And Aja had said that the real version of the film's events was meant to be seen in another movie entirely, somewhat a sequel retelling the first film's events the way that actually happened, Rashomon style. However, when Aja had presented the script to Luc Besson, he convinced the writers to change. It was Luc Besson who convinced the writers to change the ending to include the last reel of the film, revealing Marie as the killer instead of the last 5 minutes. I just thought that'd be a nice little trivia tidbit to tell y'all about as part of my generous array of offering and presenting any and all behind the scenes info on movies to you viewers. But still, for all of you horror fans out there, I would happily recommend checking out High Tension, and I am willing to give it a rating of 7 stars out of 10, as it is a very enjoyable horror movie to watch one late night with your friends, or girlfriend, or boyfriend. I'm sure that you may have a fun time watching this on one late night, especially if you just so happen to be living in an isolated farmhouse or cabin out in the middle of nowhere. And sure, the twist is out of nowhere and contradicts the film, but it mustn't ruin your joy in watching this film. This movie is still very much a fun ride. I'd recommend it to y'all. So, thanks for watching, ladies and gents, and again, you will still be expecting more Shocktober videos from me. This time, next time, I will be reviewing John Carpenter's Halloween. So watch out for that very soon. So thanks for watching, ladies and gents, and until then, I will see you all next time. Peace!